Hello, welcome to another episode of the Chaplain's Den. Today we're answering a question that you get from a lot of people who are sometimes new to the faith, sometimes new to Christianity. A lot of the time it's when they're getting more dedicated and more devoted to their faith, and they're kind of looking to get involved. What aspect should I get involved in? What should I do? What does God want me to do? And you get that quite often. I get that more from a lot of teenage people. I think are more prone. They're more readily likely to ask, but adults ask the same questions too. And the simple answer is I don't know. What does God want me to do? It took a while for me to figure out my own personal journey. Um, And there's ways that the interesting thing I find about it is there's aspects in my life that the key is they didn't make sense to me at the time. They didn't make sense to other people at the time. Other people had no problem voicing like that doesn't fit. That doesn't seem right. I don't know what you're doing. And but when I look back, I can see all the pieces and say, oh, okay, that's when God was leading me through this. That's when God was teaching me that. That was all part of building up as to who I was. So I think the most important thing, the advice that I would give people is number one, be yourself. Be yourself. Don't try to be somebody else. That is the most common. I remember there was a Christian comedian who was really kind of very eccentric, very different kind of person, and he's going to Christian leaders and basically coming away with a blueprint for their life, not his life. And so he's trying to be the pastor and be all in suit and tie and stuff, and it wasn't working. It wasn't working for him at all. And he makes the point, like he goes to God and he's like, I'm doing what you told me to. And God's like, I never told you. I never told you to be like these other people. What are you talking about? You stopped listening to me and you started listening to them. You were going to them for advice. So a lot of the time, that's the advice that I give people. Like, I don't want you to follow everything that I say. I want you to go to God. That's the number one thing, and take it to Him, because we're all different. So know who you are. That's a big key, because God has designed you for a reason. There's a purpose why you have strengths and abilities that I don't have, that other people don't have. You have unique aspects to you. It's really neat when you see God take an aspect of your life that you used in one way to benefit your life, and then later on you'll see that you're like, well, I don't know, I can't do that as well, not necessarily I can't do that as a Christian, but that's not part of my Christian walk. So how is God going to change me? And it's not that God's going to change you. He's going to say, okay, that attribute that you have, I'm just going to use it in another way. I gave it to you for a reason. You've used it for one thing. That's fine. You know, um, if you're great at team sports, for example, well, you know how to work as a team. There's a lot of people that will never know that. Maybe you've got great leadership skills. I don't know how many people try to force themselves into leadership positions. You can somewhat teach leadership skills, but there are people that are natural born leaders, and they just have that gift, and people know it right away. People will go, where I do search and rescue and deal with emergency situations. It's interesting when that there's that person that steps up and everybody knows. Like, there was a time I was dealing with a situation, and trying to do first aid to an elderly woman, and this lady in the church came and said, can I help you? Well, she didn't have to come in and say, I'm taking over, I'm a nurse. She could have done that. But I can tell right away from, just her skill set. That's enough to me to look at it and say, okay, back off and support her instead of trying to get her to do what I want her to do, because I can see right away this is something she knows. So you have different things that you are going to be good at. And if you try to follow what other Christians think you should be, a lot of the time you're gonna waste time. You're gonna waste time, and we've all done it to an extent because you're gonna get off track. Um, One of the big things in my life, a big change in my life, was when I was going to university and I was studying history, and I've always been into military history. So that's where I was going to, and I was heading for a master's program in that. I was starting that, and that was when God really took control of my life, and I handed it over and I said, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to go into ministry? Do you want me to do this? And the response that I got was really like, no, like you're not cut out for ministry. That's not who you are yet. I was in a bad, I was in kind of a very angry, resentful time period at that point. And so I'm coming to Christianity with all that in my pack per se. And God's like, no, we gotta fix some issues before you can even consider anything like that. So God sent me into childcare. So like I can remember saying to my wife, like I remember like all of a sudden I had these ideas in my head, and I'm like, what? I said to my wife, like, what is a toddler? And she's just like, okay, is easy losing it? Like, you want to work with toddlers, you don't even know what a toddler is. So I worked in childcare for years with these young kids, and I can look back and see why, because they're like kids like 5 and under. They're like the perfect example of Christians. They're loving, they're kind, they don't blast each other, they share, they're very empathetic. If they have an issue with each other, it's amazing how many times as a teacher, like you're like, okay, how can I get these two kids back on track and back as being friends? And before you've even come up with your plan, they're over there playing together. It's all water under the bridge. It's done. It's gone. They don't hold on to stuff. So there's a lot of being a Christian that I learned from these little kids. And the other thing that I learned from the kids is I can look at these kids and say, okay, no matter what these people turn out to, no matter what they become as adults, no matter how far off track they get, I will always, always love those kids. I will always love those kids because those kids in many ways were my kids. I protected them. I cared for them. You're helping to raise them. You have such an aspect of them, and you want so much for them to have a good life. It doesn't matter, how if they turn out to be an addict or something terrible later on in life. I mean, it doesn't matter. You still absolutely love them. So that shows me when people say, well, how could God love somebody like that? Because he knew them from the beginning. He loved them when they were the sweetest, kindest thing. He's seen the best of them right off the bat. So there's a lot of lessons like that. And somebody was asking me once about, we were having a conversation because there was a thing I was involved in, and there were some pastors that were kind of like, God doesn't want you in those situations. That's not the situation for you. And I'm thinking, well, God does want me in those situations, but he doesn't want you in those situations because you can't deal with those situations. You can't deal with those people. He puts me in those situations because I can deal with those people. I can deal with those situations. And I can see it because I'm able to help those people in incredible ways through the ability and the opportunity that God gives me. And the fact that God is able to help those people as an end result, I'm able to look back and say, yeah, that's exactly what I was supposed to be doing. So for me to look at these other pastors and say I should model myself after them, I'll never be them. Some pastors are wonderful people, but they've lived very sheltered lives. I've never been that way. I've never been that way. And I can't go back and reprogram myself to be something else. So we were having this conversation that somebody was debating it. And I said, listen, if you're a German Shepherd, take a dog analogy. If you're a German Shepherd, you have all kinds of skills and abilities. You will never be an Irish setter. It's just that simple. It's just that simple. It doesn't matter how we train you. You're never going to see a golden retriever, be like a police dog. Golden retrievers are not going to be chasing anybody and taking them down, or, there's certain things. If you're a bulldog, you have a great ability for certain things. You're never going to be great at racing. You're never going to be a greyhound. We can take you to the track and put you on the best diet and all kinds of training and everything else. You're never going to be the fastest dog around. Never going to happen. And you have to understand that God made you who you are. He made you who you are. So whether you're a dog person or not, I think you can follow that analogy that, if you're, like I say, if you're a German Shepherd, there's traits and abilities that you have, and God will use that. He will say, I have this person who is that type of person. These are the situations I want them in. This is how I can use them. And if he's got a situation that doesn't fit you, that's not your calling. That's not your role. That's not who you're supposed to be. He's got other people that will do that. If he wants somebody to be the type of person to visit the sick or care for the elderly, there are people that are wonderful at that. At the same time, there's ministries like going into prisons or dealing with drug addicts or different things, that there's people who are great at that. Maybe your ministry is just going to be in the workplace that you're in, and that's something that you can take in that other people couldn't. Whatever it may be. Chaplains, most of the time, have a background in where they serve. So, for example, for me, one of the tasks that I do is chaplain with search and rescue. Well, I was involved with search and rescue for years before they asked me to become their chaplain. So, am I the same as every other priest and pastor? No, they're all different. They're all different. They all have different strengths and abilities, and they're designed for that purpose. You have a purpose. I don't know what it is. I can't tell you how to be like me. You're not, maybe some people are similar to me in some ways. I work with a group of chaplains that they're all different, and they all go into different areas of life because that is their strengths. So the key thing for me, I think, is know yourself, know what your strengths and weaknesses are, know what your abilities are, and go to God and say, where do you want me to go? Lead me into it. Have the faith that he's going to lead you into some things. Like I say, if you go back through the Bible, almost everybody who has a huge impact in the Bible has everybody else looking at them like, that doesn't make sense. It's like me in childcare. People are like, okay, you're specializing in military history, and all of a sudden you're going into childcare. That makes no sense. Doesn't make sense to you. Didn't make sense to me. Makes perfect sense to God. This is part of the blueprint that I have just for him. He's got a blueprint just for you. So God bless on your journey. I hope that helps. Be true to yourself and be true to God. God bless.